Hey, this is Chris from Mission Capital, and in today's video, I'm going to show you how to use the working capital to drive your model. So, a lot of times in a model, people pretty much start at the top. They say, okay, let's talk about revenue and let's do some like year-over-year growth assumption, and then, what happens, right? And we'll make some COGS assumptions, and then we have our OPEX and we get a net income, and how does that sort of waterfall down and how do we get to the cash? But a little bit more of a scientific way to do it is actually to forecast your purchases through your working capital and then let that flow through the income statement. So I'll show you that now. So this is a mini three-statement model that I'm working on for like a bunch of different tutorials, and it's just fun to play around with because it lets you, learn the accounting through the modeling. And so what I have here, let me go up again. I have a company that is just capitalized with $10,000 of equity through their contributed capital, and then the month ends with that 10,000 of cash, and that's all they have. If I go up to the top, there's zero operations whatsoever. So let's go down to their working capital and show how this flows through your inventory, AP, and AR, and through the P&L. So let's go down here. I have an inventory schedule. I don't have any inventory, and so the first thing I have to do is just make a purchase. And so I'm going to do a $1,000 purchase of my inventory. So I'm going to punch that in here, and let's see what happens. So the first thing I've specified is, okay, 3 months later, again, just through a formula, I'm going to say the inventory that I purchased, I'm actually going to run through my income statement as cost of goods sold. So I'm going to be holding it for 3 months and then sell it. At the same time, once it becomes a purchase, it also ends up in my payables here. So you can see I've got a separate accounts payable schedule. And this has a 2-month lag on when I'm going to actually make a cash payment out. So you can see I've got the payable as a liability here, and then 2 months later, I'm going to pay it out based on the terms I have with my supplier. And so if we go back to the inventory and we say, all right, I'm going to sell this in 3 months, then we can see that in the income statement. So let's go all the way up to the top now. And I'm skipping a couple schedules here, but here's that same inventory that I've now sold as a cost of goods sold. And I'm going to be grossing that up to get my revenue. So I've got an assumption over here that just says this is my margin on that inventory. And so if I paid $1,000 for it, I'm going to have to sell it for $2,500 in order to make that 60% margin. And so then that's going to flow down and I get my net income for the period. But that's not how the cash is going to work. So let's go back to the schedules here. And so what happens is once I actually sell this inventory here, I recognize the revenue in my accounts receivable here, but I have a 1-month collection delay on that revenue, right? I've earned the sale, but I haven't necessarily recorded the cash yet. And so I actually get the cash here in the following month. And so how it all works in your cash flow statement is we're saying I actually don't pay for that inventory until my payable is due in this month here. And then when I actually have the net income, my cash flow statement is adjusting it and saying, look, I know it looks like it's $1,500 of cash on the income statement, but that's accrual-based accounting. So let's pull that $1,500 out here because we're actually going to get the cash for our revenue a month later. And so this is basically an adjusting entry because you can see it goes back to 0 to say, no, there's no impact of cash here. The real cash is happening here where I pay for it and then here where I receive money for that revenue. And so when I sum them together, I get that same $1,500 of cash that is reflected in my accrual accounting from the top. And so how that cash rolls is you can see we've got the 10,000, then we pay for that inventory, so we're down to 9, it stays at 9, and then we receive the revenue another month later and we go up to 11,500. And so this is how it flows through, again, driving through working capital. So again, all I'm doing is I'm making one purchase here, but there's all these different timing adjustments that go into when the cash is actually impacted. And so this is a nice clean way to run all this through the working capital accounts and see how it has an effect on your P&L at the top, as opposed to just saying, all right, revenue is going to be X and then COGS is Y, and then we're going to come down here and use a DSO assumption or something like that to just like back into the working capital, that's an appropriate way to do that. You can do it, but this is a little bit more of a scientific way to do it. And so as I start adding more purchases, let's just say I do this each month, what starts to happen is, these accounts roll naturally, and you can see my days on hand is about 90 days or 3 months because I specified here I've got a 3-month sale lag. My payables days is about 60 because, again, I have a 2 month payment period with my suppliers, and my days outstanding is about 30 because I have a 1 month collection expectation on that cash. So you can use these working capital stats as a way to like a double check that your underlying modeling is working, as opposed to using these figures to drive the balance. So again, this is for an inventory-based company, not a SaaS company. I'm going to work on some other tutorials where we're building SaaS up through unearned revenue. But again, this is a little bit more of a scientific way to run your model through the working capital and see how it indirectly affects the income statement, as opposed to working your way down from the top to the bottom. So a little bit of a long video. I know there's a lot of detail there, but I hope you found that helpful. I'm going to keep going with some tutorials like this, so just stay tuned for that. Thanks for watching. I will see you in the next one.